Imagine a world where your deepest beliefs could cost you everything. Not just your freedom, but your very life, in a manner so gruesome, so utterly barbaric, it defies modern comprehension. This isn't some distant, ancient tale from a forgotten land. This is England, the year 1586. And this is the true story of Margaret Clitherow, a woman whose unwavering faith led her to face an execution so chilling, it was designed to break the human spirit long before it crushed the body. What if I told you that in a few short minutes, you would witness the horrifying details of a judicial murder unlike any other in British history? A death sentence so exquisitely cruel, it was reserved for only the most defiant. Margaret Clitherow was not a traitor, not a murderer, nor a thief. Her crime? Daring to offer shelter to Catholic priests in a Protestant England, a simple act of charity deemed an act of treason by a vengeful crown. Every day she defied the law was another day she risked the ultimate price. This ordinary mother of three, a butcher's wife from York, was thrust into an unimaginable crucible. She faced judges who offered her every chance to recant, to betray her conscience, to simply lie and live. But Margaret, with a quiet strength that defied the gallows, refused. She knew the consequences. She understood the terrifying legal precedent her execution would set. She stood at the precipice of an agonizing choice. Abandon her God or embrace a torment reserved for the damned. Everything you've been taught about justice and punishment will be challenged by Margaret's story. This wasn't a quick beheading or a merciful hanging. This was a slow, deliberate act of state-sanctioned torture, intended to send a terrifying message to anyone who dared to challenge the Queen's religious supremacy. You will discover the chilling mechanics of an execution method so brutal it makes other forms of capital punishment seem humane. How much weight can a human body endure before it simply ceases to be? What final thoughts race through the mind of someone being slowly crushed to death? The answers are here, waiting to be unearthed. Prepare yourself, because the brutal truth of Margaret Clitherow's final moments will stay with you long after the screen fades to black. The year is 1577. In the ancient cobbled streets of York, a city steeped in Roman history and medieval intrigue, lived Margaret Clitherow. Her life, by all outward appearances, was one of quiet domesticity. She was a respected butcher's wife, her home bustling with the daily rhythms of commerce and family. 3 children filled her days with laughter and the endless demands of motherhood, and her husband, John Clitherow, provided a stable, if sometimes distant, presence. Margaret Clitherow was known for her sharp wit, her formidable intelligence, and a kindness that extended to all who crossed her path. Yet, beneath this veneer of ordinary existence, Margaret Clitherow harbored a secret, one that placed her eye in direct opposition to the very foundations of Elizabethan England. This was an era of profound religious upheaval. Queen Elizabeth I, firmly Protestant, had ascended the throne and swiftly established the Church of England as the supreme religious authority. To be anything other than Anglican was not merely a matter of personal faith. It was an act of treason against the crown. Laws were enacted with chilling efficiency, designed to stamp out any lingering vestiges of Catholicism. Recusancy fines, punishing those who refused to attend Anglican services, bled families dry. Priests, trained in secret seminaries abroad, risked their lives daily, hunted like animals. The very act of celebrating Mass became an act of rebellion, punishable by imprisonment, torture, and ultimately, death. For Margaret Clitherow, born into a Protestant family herself, the journey to Catholicism was a deeply personal, spiritual awakening. It was not a political statement, but a profound conviction that resonated with her soul. She converted in 1574, a decision made with full knowledge of the perilous path she was choosing. Her husband, John, while not a Catholic himself, was remarkably tolerant, a rare beacon of understanding in a world consumed by religious fervor. He allowed her to practice her faith in secret, turning a blind eye to the clandestine masses held within their very home. This fragile peace, however, was destined to shatter. Margaret Clitherow became a pillar of the underground Catholic community in York. Her home transformed into a sanctuary, a safe haven for hunted priests and a place where the forbidden rituals of the old faith could be performed under the cloak of darkness. She risked everything, not for glory or recognition, but out of an unshakable belief in her conscience. She provided shelter, food, and comfort to those persecuted for their faith, her compassion overriding any fear for her own safety. Each hidden priest, each whispered mass, brought her closer to peril. The air in York was thick with suspicion, and the authorities, ever vigilant, were closing in. The stakes were not merely financial fines or social ostracization. They were life and death. The conflict was not just between two religions, but between individual conscience and an unforgiving state. Margaret Clitherow stood at the precipice, her unwavering faith a dangerous defiance in a world that demanded absolute conformity. Clitherow, a woman of deep conviction, found herself caught in this narrowing space of religious persecution. Her initial defiance was subtle, almost imperceptible to the casual observer. She continued to attend Anglican services, a compulsory act for all citizens, but her heart remained steadfastly Catholic. This dual existence, however, could not last. The spiritual hunger within her, the yearning for the true sacraments, became an unbearable weight. She began to seek out clandestine masses, whispered gatherings in hidden rooms, where the ancient rites were performed under the constant threat of discovery. Her household, once a picture of Anglican conformity, slowly transformed into a sanctuary for the forbidden faith. Priests, weary and hunted, found refuge within her walls. Clitherow's home became a vital link in the underground network that sustained Catholicism in England. She hid vestments, consecrated wine, and the precious chalices used in Mass, often concealing them in a secret compartment built into her butcher shop. Her courage was not born of recklessness, but of an unshakable belief that she was doing God's work. She knew the risks, understood the severe penalties, yet her faith compelled her forward. The authorities, ever vigilant, began to notice the unusual comings and goings at Clitherow's house. Neighbors, some out of genuine Protestant zeal, others perhaps hoping for a reward, reported suspicious activities. The fines for recusancy escalated, but Clitherow, supported by her husband John, who, though Anglican, often turned a blind eye to her religious activities, perhaps out of love, perhaps out of a shared sense of defiance against state overreach, refused to yield. She paid the crippling fines, her family's finances steadily eroding, but she would not compromise her soul. Her first arrest came in 1576. She was taken before the ecclesiastical court, accused of refusing to attend Anglican services. The judges, stern and unyielding, demanded she conform. Clitherow, however, stood firm, her voice clear and unwavering. She declared her allegiance to the Catholic Church, a direct challenge to the Queen's supremacy. This act of defiance earned her a period of imprisonment, a taste of the harsher realities that awaited those who chose faith over conformity. Yet, even within the confines of her cell, Clitherow found ways to practice her faith, her resolve only hardening with each passing day. Upon her release, Clitherow returned to her life in York, but she was no longer merely a butcher's wife. She had become a symbol, a quiet beacon of resistance for the persecuted Catholic community. Her home continued to be a haven, her spirit undimmed by her incarceration. The authorities, frustrated by her persistence, increased their surveillance. The perimeter around her tightened further, each hidden mass, each secreted priest, bringing her closer to the inevitable confrontation. The stakes were rising, and Clitherow, fully aware of the escalating danger, prepared herself for whatever lay ahead. Her unwavering faith, once a private matter, had now placed her on a collision course with the full might of the English state. The hidden mass, once a hushed ritual whispered only among the most trusted, began to attract more desperate souls. Clitherow's home, a sanctuary in a city of spies, became a beacon for those clinging to the old faith. Priests, their faces gone from constant flight, found refuge within her walls, celebrating Mass in secret chambers, their voices barely audible above the city's din. Clitherow herself became an expert at concealment, her sharp mind devising ingenious hiding places for vestments, chalices, and the precious few books of Catholic scripture that remained. She knew the risks, the brutal consequences, should her activities be discovered. Each creak of the floorboards, each unexpected knock at the door, sent a jolt of fear through her, yet her resolve only hardened. Her husband, John, a man of practical concerns, grew increasingly uneasy. He was a Protestant, though not a zealous one, and the escalating danger his wife courted threatened not just their family, but his livelihood and reputation. He pleaded with Clitherow to cease her dangerous work, to attend Anglican services, even if just for show, to avoid drawing the ire of the authorities. He argued that their children, still young and vulnerable, deserved a life free from the constant shadow of persecution. But Clitherow, while loving her husband deeply, could not be swayed. Her faith was not a matter of convenience or outward conformity. It was the very core of her being, a truth she held more precious than life itself. She believed that to abandon it, even for the sake of safety, would be to betray God Himself. The fines for recusancy mounted, bleeding the family dry. Each Sunday that Clitherow refused to attend the parish church, another penalty was levied, chipping away at their financial stability. The local authorities, ever vigilant, began to take notice of the strange comings and goings at the butcher's house. Neighbors, some out of genuine suspicion, others out of a desire for reward, watched and reported. The encirclement around Clitherow was tightening, slowly, inexorably. She could feel the pressure, the invisible threads of suspicion drawing closer, but she refused to falter. One cold morning, a detachment of Queen's men, led by the zealous Sheriff of York, pounded on her door. They had received an anonymous tip, a whisper of priests and popish rituals. Clitherow, ever resourceful, had just enough time to usher a hidden priest into a secret compartment behind the fireplace before the door burst open. Her heart pounded, but her face remained a mask of calm composure. The search that followed was thorough, brutal even, as they overturned furniture, ripped up floorboards, and probed every corner of her home. The children, terrified, clung to their father. Clitherow watched, her hands clasped tightly, praying for a miracle. The priest remained undiscovered, a testament to Clitherow's meticulous planning and unwavering courage. The raid was a chilling sign, a stark warning that her time was running out. The confrontation she had long anticipated was no longer a distant threat. It was at her doorstep. The chilling sign became a stark reality. Days after the raid, a summons arrived, not for her, but for her children and servants. They were to appear before the Council of the North, charged with recusancy. This was a deliberate tactic, a cruel twist of the knife designed to break Clitherow. The authorities knew her devotion, knew she would never allow her loved ones to suffer for her convictions. The trap was sprung, and Clitherow walked directly into it. She presented herself before the court, not as a defiant rebel, but as a mother protecting her brood. The room crackled with an oppressive tension. Lord Burghley, the Queen's chief minister, presided with an air of cold authority, his gaze sharp and unyielding. Other members of the council, stern-faced and unmoving, watched her every breath. Clitherow, however, remained composed, her chin held high. She admitted to her Catholic faith, a bold declaration in that unforgiving chamber. Yet, when pressed to reveal the names of priests or fellow recusants, she remained silent. They threatened her with fines, with imprisonment, with the very separation from her children she so desperately sought to avoid. Still, Clitherow refused to betray anyone. Her steadfast refusal infuriated the court. They saw not principled conviction, but stubborn defiance. The questions grew sharper, the threats more explicit. They demanded she plead, to submit to the Queen's law, to acknowledge the supremacy of the Anglican Church. This was the moment of truth, the precipice upon which her life, and the lives of those she protected, teetered. Clitherow understood the gravity of the situation. A plea of guilty would condemn her to an uncertain fate, but might spare her family. A plea of not guilty would initiate a trial, dragging out the agony and potentially implicating others. But Clitherow had another path in mind, one born of desperation and an unshakable faith. She refused to enter any plea. She declared that she would not be tried by a jury of common men, for they would surely be perjured, forced to condemn her by the very laws she believed unjust. Her refusal to plead was a direct challenge to the legal system, an act of civil disobedience that stunned the court into silence. It was an unprecedented move, a legal maneuver that denied the court its power to proceed with a conventional trial. Her silence was a roar. It echoed through the chamber, a testament to her unyielding will. The judges, accustomed to the swift machinery of justice, were flummoxed. They consulted among themselves, their hushed whispers filled with frustration. This woman, this butcher's wife, was not playing by their rules. She had found a loophole, a way to stand firm without outright confessing or denying. But the law had an answer for such defiance, a brutal, archaic punishment reserved for those who refused to plead. The court finally broke its silence, and the Lord Mayor delivered the chilling verdict, a pronouncement that sent a shiver through the assembled onlookers. The words hung in the air, heavy with menace, sealing Clitherow's fate. The morning of March 25, 1586, dawned cold and bleak over York. Clitherow was led through the narrow streets, the chill biting at her exposed skin, yet her gaze remained steady, fixed on some unseen horizon. She was not alone. A silent procession of onlookers lined the path, their faces a mixture of fear, pity, and grim fascination. Some wept openly, others whispered prayers, but no one dared to intervene. The city, usually bustling, seemed to hold its breath, hushed by the gravity of the moment. Her destination was the toll booth on Ouse Bridge, a place synonymous with justice, or in this case, its brutal perversion. A large, heavy door lay flat on the ground, ominous and unyielding. The executioners, grim-faced and efficient, began their macabre preparations. They stripped Clitherow, leaving her clad only in a simple linen shift, exposing her to the biting wind and the prying eyes of the crowd. It was a final indignity, designed to strip away her last vestiges of humanity, yet Clitherow stood firm, her resolve unwavering. They placed her upon the door, her back pressed against the hard wood. Her hands were stretched out and bound to two posts, her feet similarly secured. A sharp rock, the size of a man's fist, was placed beneath her back, a cruel detail intended to increase the agony. Then, the first weights were brought, heavy stones, rough and uneven, piled onto her body. The air was thick with the groans of the straining men and the sickening thud of stone on flesh. With each added weight, a gasp rippled through the crowd. Clitherow did not scream. She did not cry out. A quiet prayer, barely audible, escaped her lips, a testament to her profound faith, even in the face of unimaginable suffering. The pressure mounted, crushing her ribs, compressing her lungs. Her breath came in ragged, desperate gasps, each one a battle against the suffocating weight. The executioners continued their gruesome task, adding more and more stones, until the pile upon her body was immense, a grotesque monument to state-sanctioned cruelty. Finally, after 15 minutes of excruciating torment, her struggle ceased. The last breath rattled from her body, a faint whisper lost in the cold morning air. Her body, broken and contorted, lay still beneath the crushing burden. Margaret Clitherow, the butcher's wife who dared to defy a queen for her faith, was dead. Her resolve, stronger than any stone, had held until the very end. The crowd dispersed slowly, leaving behind a lingering silence and the chilling image of her final moments. Her death was not just an execution, It was a brutal, public spectacle, a stark warning to any who dared to challenge the crown's religious authority. Yet, for many, Clitherow's sacrifice cemented her status not as a criminal, but as a martyr. The news of Clitherow's death rippled through York, then across England, and eventually beyond its shores. Her brutal end, far from deterring Catholic resistance, ignited a fervent devotion among many. Her sacrifice became a rallying cry, a testament to unwavering faith in the face of unimaginable cruelty. For those who had witnessed her steadfastness, her refusal to yield even an inch of her conviction, Clitherow became more than just a victim. She became a symbol of defiance. Her body, though broken and mangled, was quickly spirited away by her Catholic sympathizers, treated with reverence and enshrined as a relic. The very act of her execution, intended to crush the spirit of recusancy, instead transformed her into a martyr. Ballads were sung in hushed tones, recounting her bravery. Secret pamphlets circulated, detailing the horror of her final moments and celebrating her unwavering faith. Clitherow's story, amplified by the very brutality of her death, became a powerful narrative in the ongoing religious struggle. The Crown, in its attempt to enforce religious conformity through terror, had inadvertently created a saint. The image of Clitherow, pressed beneath the crushing weight, became etched into the collective memory of English Catholics. Her name, once whispered in fear, was now spoken with pride and reverence. The authorities had sought to make an example of her, but the example they made was not of submission, but of unyielding spiritual fortitude. Her husband, John Clitherow, though an Anglican, found himself caught in the tragic aftermath of his wife's martyrdom. He had tried to protect her, to shield her from the inevitable consequences of her faith, but ultimately he could not. Her death left an indelible mark on him and their children, a legacy of profound loss intertwined with extraordinary courage. The family home, once a bustling center of commerce, became a pilgrimage site for those who sought inspiration from Clitherow's sacrifice. The impact of Clitherow's execution extended far beyond the immediate shock and grief. It solidified the resolve of many English Catholics, convincing them that their faith was worth dying for. It exposed the extreme lengths to which the Elizabethan government would go to enforce its religious agenda, yet it also highlighted the unbreakable spirit of those who resisted. Clitherow's story served as a stark reminder of the human cost of religious intolerance, a brutal chapter in England's tumultuous history. Centuries later, the memory of Clitherow endures. She was canonized as one of the 40 martyrs of England and Wales in 1970, formally recognized by the Catholic Church for her ultimate sacrifice. Her life and death stand as a powerful testament to personal conviction, a chilling reminder of the lengths to which states will go to control belief, and the enduring power of faith in the face of overwhelming oppression. Clitherow's final, agonizing moments were not an end, but a beginning, the birth of a legend, a martyr whose story continues to resonate, echoing through the annals of history as a powerful symbol of resistance and unwavering devotion. Her name, Clitherow, remains synonymous with extraordinary courage. The execution of Margaret Clitherow was not merely the brutal end of one woman's life. It was a chilling testament to the unforgiving religious fervor that gripped 16th-century England. Her defiance, rooted in an unwavering commitment to her Catholic faith, ultimately sealed her fate, transforming her into a symbol of resistance against an oppressive state. The pressing, a method typically reserved for those who refuse to plead, became a grotesque instrument of martyrdom, elevating her sacrifice in the eyes of her co-religionists. Her story, far from fading into obscurity, resonated deeply within the clandestine Catholic communities. They saw in Clitherow not a criminal, but a saint, a woman whose steadfast belief transcended earthly fear. Her death, intended to be a deterrent, instead ignited a quiet, simmering defiance among those who clung to the old faith. Pamphlets and hushed accounts of her final moments circulated, solidifying her legacy as a martyr. The very brutality of her end served to amplify her message, transforming her from a simple butcher's wife into a figure of enduring spiritual power. The authorities, in their ruthless pursuit of conformity, had inadvertently created a legend. Clitherow's refusal to betray her conscience, her silent endurance under unimaginable torment, became a powerful narrative of spiritual triumph over temporal tyranny. Her journey from a woman navigating the treacherous religious landscape of York to an unyielding icon was complete. She had faced the ultimate challenge, and in her agonizing death, she had, in her own eyes and those of her followers, achieved a profound victory. Centuries later, the name Margaret Clitherow still echoes through the annals of history, a stark reminder of the human cost of religious persecution. Her story is a poignant illustration of how extreme beliefs, on both sides of the divide, could lead to such horrific ends. The conflict that defined her life, the clash between individual conscience and state power, found its gruesome resolution on that fateful Good Friday. Her unwavering faith, the very catalyst for her suffering, ultimately became the bedrock of her lasting legacy, a legacy not of defeat, but of enduring, if tragic, conviction.